They'll help, Zekthar said with certainty. Humans don't abandon their allies. 48 hours later, Zekthar stood once again in Earth's diplomatic facility. But this time the room was filled with military officers. Ambassador Webb sat at the head of the table, flanked by representatives from Earth's major military powers. Commander Sarah Chen was there, along with generals, admirals, and strategic planners from a dozen human nations. Zekthar laid out everything: the predecessor fleet, its capabilities, the existential threat it posed. When he finished, silence filled the room. Then a gray-haired human general spoke. His name badge read General Marcus Thompson, United Earth Defense Force. His accent marked him as from the North American region. Commander, let me make sure I understand. You're asking us to fight an automated fleet of ships built by a civilization that makes the Coalition look like children playing with toys. Ships that adapt to any weapon we use. Ships that can sterilize entire planets. He leaned back. And you're asking because you think we might have a chance? Yes, General. Why? What makes you think Earth can succeed where the entire Coalition has failed? Zekthar met the General's eyes. Because humans have been fighting losing battles for their entire history. And somehow, you find ways to win them anyway. A woman in a Chinese military uniform spoke next. Admiral Li Wei, Pacific Fleet. Commander, what assets can the Coalition provide? Ships, weapons, personnel. Everything we have, Zekthar said. But I won't lie to you. Based on preliminary engagements, even our combined forces may not be enough. We're asking you to buy time. Time for our scientists to find a weakness, time for civilians to evacuate. You're asking us to sacrifice ourselves, said a stern-faced man with a Russian accent. General Dmitry Volkov. I've read about the predecessor civilization. We would be fighting gods. No, Morrison's voice cut through the room. He'd been standing quietly in the corner, but now he stepped forward. We'd be fighting machines. Old machines. Powerful machines, but still just machines. And machines can be broken. Ambassador Webb had been silent throughout, his expression unreadable. Now he spoke. Commander Zekthar, step outside with me for a moment. In the hallway, Webb turned to face him. You're not telling us everything. What are you holding back? Zekthar hesitated, then decided on honesty. The Council estimates that even if we succeed in stopping this fleet, casualties will be catastrophic. 90% of our forces, maybe more. We're asking Earth to send your people to die. And if we don't, Webb asked quietly, then the predecessor fleet reaches Coalition core worlds in 6 months. Trillions die, the Coalition falls, and eventually the fleet reaches Earth, with no allies, no warning, and no one to stand with you. Webb nodded slowly. So we fight now, together with a chance of survival. Or we wait and face them alone with no chance at all. Yes, that's what I thought. Webb straightened his uniform. Then let's go back inside and figure out how to kill some gods. The planning session lasted 14 hours. Human military strategists pored over every piece of data the Coalition had on predecessor technology. They asked questions no Coalition officer had thought to ask, approached the problem from angles that hadn't been considered. It was General Thompson who proposed the strategy that became known as the Saturn Protocol. Look, he said, pointing at the holographic display showing a predecessor ship's structure. These things adapt to energy weapons and kinetic weapons. They analyze the attack, then reconfigure their defenses to counter it. But they're still following programmed responses, right? They're computers, not creative thinkers. Your point? Admiral Lee asked. My point is that computers, no matter how advanced, follow algorithms. They make decisions based on data. So we give them bad data. We overload them with information. He pulled up a schematic of Saturn. We use Saturn's rings as a weapon. Millions of ice particles, each moving at different speeds in different directions. The predecessor ships will detect them all as potential threats and try to calculate defense patterns for each one. That will slow them down, not stop them. A Coalition tactical officer objected. No, but it will distract them, while their processing power is occupied calculating threat vectors for billions of ice particles. We hit them with everything we've got. Different weapons types, different attack angles, random timing. We make each attack so different that their adaptation protocols can't keep up. Dr. Chen, Sarah's brother, spoke up via holographic display from his lab. It could work. But you'd need massive coordination. Thousands of ships attacking simultaneously with constantly varying tactics. One pattern emerges and the predecessor systems will adapt. We can do random, Commander Chen said. Humans are very good at chaos. But the coalition forces aren't, Zekthar pointed out. Most of our tactics rely on coordinated, predictable patterns. Then we split the forces, Rachel Park suggested. Coalition ships provide the overwhelming firepower, massive, sustained bombardment. Human ships provide the chaos, random attack patterns, unconventional weapons, unpredictable timing. Between the two approaches, we keep the predecessor ships constantly adapting, but never fully countering either strategy. Admiral Corveth, present via hologram, whistled thoughtfully. It's insane. It's our best option, Webb said. Unless anyone has a better idea? No one did. The Council approved the Saturn Protocol 48 hours later. A joint fleet began assembling. 3,000 coalition warships and 200 human vessels. The disparity in numbers was stark, but Zekthar had learned not to underestimate human effectiveness. 2 weeks before the planned engagement, Zekthar found himself aboard the human flagship Indomitable, a massive carrier that served as the command center for Earth's forces. He was meeting with the human commanders when alarms began blaring. "Contact," a sensor operator shouted. "Predecessor ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're here early." "How many?" Commander Chen demanded. 8. No, 13. Contacts multiplying. "Sir, I'm reading 47 predecessor ships. They're in attack formation, heading straight for us." The assembly point was a small moon orbiting an uninhabited planet. There were no civilians to evacuate, but the fleet wasn't ready. Ships were still arriving. Weapon systems were still being calibrated. Supply lines were still being established. They were about to be caught completely unprepared. "This is Admiral Chen to all ships. Combat stations immediately. Prepare for engagement." Sarah's voice was calm but urgent. "We implement Saturn Protocol now, ready or not." "We're not at Saturn," General Thompson protested. The plan just changed. "We adapt." Chen turned to Zekthar. "Commander, can your ships hold a defensive line while we organize the chaos strategy?" "We can try." "Then let's show these ancient machines what the modern galaxy can do." The battle began badly. The predecessor ships moved with fluid grace, their weapons cutting through coalition shields like they didn't exist. 3 coalition destroyers vanished in the first 2 minutes, simply erased from existence by weapons that converted matter directly into energy. The coalition fleet formed a defensive wall, pouring fire into the enemy. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, particle cannons, everything they had. The predecessor ship's defenses shimmered, adapting in real time. Within minutes, coalition weapons were only half as effective. Then a third, then barely scratching the surface. "They're adapting too fast," Corveth shouted over the comm. "We need the human element now." "Human ships, you are clear to engage," Chen announced. "Remember, be unpredictable. Make them think." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. Human ships didn't attack in formation. They didn't follow standard tactical doctrine. Instead, each ship, sometimes each individual pilot, chose their own approach. Some came in fast and aggressive, firing everything and then breaking away. Others approached slowly, using cover and stealth. Some attacked head-on while others struck from angles the predecessor ships hadn't prioritized. The Remembrance, commanded by Captain James Liu, flew directly into the debris field of a destroyed coalition ship, using the wreckage as camouflage before launching missiles at point-blank range. The missiles weren't explosive. They were filled with reflective chaff that scattered across a predecessor ship's hull, temporarily blinding its sensors. The Defiant came in spinning, rotating along 3 axes simultaneously while firing its weapons. The seemingly random motion made it impossible for the predecessor ships to calculate accurate targeting solutions. The Resilient didn't fire weapons at all initially. Instead, it deployed thousands of small drones, barely more than sensor packages with thrusters. The predecessor ships detected them as potential threats and wasted processing power analyzing each one. "It's working," Sola reported from the Eternal Vigil. "The predecessor ships are showing signs of system overload. Their adaptation rates are slowing. All coalition ships concentrated fire on target Alpha 1, Corveth ordered. Pour everything into a single target." While the predecessor ships were distracted by the chaotic human attacks, the coalition fleet focused all firepower on one vessel. The sustained, overwhelming bombardment finally overcame its adaptive defenses. The predecessor ship's hull breached and then it was gone, collapsing in on itself in an implosion of twisted space-time. "First kill." Someone shouted. But 46 predecessor ships remained, and they were learning. Their counterattacks became more focused, more efficient. 2 human frigates were destroyed when a predecessor vessel predicted their random attack pattern. It hadn't been random enough. "We need to escalate the chaos," Chen said. "Morrison, deploy Special Tactics 7. Copy that." "Special Tactics 7 is go." Zekthar didn't know what Special Tactics 7 was until he saw it. A human transport ship moved toward a cluster of predecessor vessels, not attacking, just drifting on a collision course. The predecessor ships, programmed to eliminate threats, focused fire on it. The transport ship exploded, but it had been packed with nuclear weapons. The explosion wasn't enough to destroy the predecessor ships, but the electromagnetic pulse and radiation temporarily disrupted their systems. In that moment of vulnerability, human and coalition forces struck hard. 3 more predecessor ships were destroyed, but the cost was mounting. Zekthar watched as ship after ship vanished from his tactical display. Coalition vessels were being systematically dismantled. Human ships were being outmaneuvered and destroyed. They'd taken out 4 predecessor ships, but at the cost of 70 coalition vessels and 18 human ships. "We can't sustain this," Korveth said grimly. "Even if we destroy them all, we'll lose 90% of our forces." Zekthar was about to agree when Dr. Chen's voice burst through on the emergency channel. "I've got it. Commander, Admiral, anyone listening? I know how to stop them." "Chen, make it fast," Sarah said, dodging fire from a predecessor ship. "We're kind of busy dying here." The bioweapon from Kelvis 7, it triggered the predecessor defense response, right? These ships are designed to eliminate biological contamination. That's their core programming. We know that. How does it help? Because I can synthesize a signal that mimics the bioweapon's signature. If we broadcast it from a specific location, the predecessor ships will think that's where the contamination is. They'll focus all their efforts on sterilizing that single point instead of attacking our fleet. "Where do we broadcast from?" Zekthar asked, though he already knew the answer. Silence on the channel. Then Morrison spoke. "From a ship. Someone has to fly close enough to the predecessor formation to make the signal believable, close enough that they can't ignore it." "That's a suicide mission," General Thompson said flatly. "It's the only way," Dr. Chen insisted. "The signal needs to be at the center of their formation, overwhelming their sensors. Once they focus on it, we can retreat and regroup. By the time they realize it's a decoy, we'll be gone." "How long would the decoy ship need to hold position?" Zekthar asked. 3 minutes. Maybe 4 minutes. An eternity in combat. No ship could survive 4 minutes at the center of a predecessor formation, while all 43 remaining vessels focused fire on it. "I'll do it," Morrison said immediately. "Negative," Chen snapped. "You're head of security for the entire human diplomatic corps. We need you." "Then I'll go," said Captain Liu from the Remembrance. "I volunteer," came another voice, then another. Within seconds, dozens of captains from both human and coalition forces were volunteering. Zekthar looked at the tactical display, at the ships winking out one by one, at the impossible odds. They needed a ship fast enough to reach the center of the formation, tough enough to survive the initial barrage, and with a crew experienced enough to handle the stress. "I'll take the Eternal Vigil," he said. "Commander, no." Sola started. "That's an order." "Sola. Chen, can you transmit your signal to my ship?" "Already uploading it." "Zekthar." Vrental's voice cut through the channel, her crystalline form appearing via hologram. "The Council has not authorized." "With respect, High Counselor, the Council isn't here." "I am." Zekthar felt a strange calm settle over him. This was what command meant. Not sending others to die, but leading them. "This is my call." "Then I'm coming with you," Park said. "If this is humanity's first major operation with the Coalition, we go together." Before anyone could object, her fighter detached from the Indomitable and moved to dock with the Eternal Vigil. "Lieutenant Commander." "That's not necessary," Zekthar began. "Neither is you going alone. Humans have a saying, Commander. We're all in this together. Today we prove it." Within minutes, Park was on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, along with Morrison, who had insisted on coming too. "Someone needs to manage weapons," he'd said simply. Zekthar looked at his bridge crew, Sola at tactical, his best pilots at the helm, human warriors standing beside his own. This was what the Alliance was supposed to be. Different species united by common purpose, All ships pull back, Zekthar ordered. Give us a clear run to the center of their formation. When they converge on us, hit them with everything you've got. Understood? Understood, Chen confirmed. Zekthar, it's been an honor. The honor is mine, Admiral. Eternal Vigil, full speed ahead. The ship accelerated toward the predecessor formation. The enemy vessels immediately recognized them as a priority target, their geometric forms shifting to track the approaching ship. Shields to maximum, Zekthar ordered. All power to forward deflectors. The first impacts came seconds later. The Eternal Vigil shuddered as weapons fire. Weapons that had destroyed ships in single shots, hammered against its shields. But the Eternal Vigil was a coalition command ship, built to survive, its shields held. For now. Entering the formation, the pilot announced, his voice steady despite the obvious fear, taking up position at the calculated center point. Dr. Chen, begin transmission, Zekthar said. The signal broadcasted from the Eternal Vigil. Zekthar watched on the tactical display as, one by one, every predecessor ship turned its full attention toward them. Their weapons reconfigured, their engines repositioned. The entire formation was collapsing inward, focusing on the single point where the bioweapon signature seemed to be emanating from. It's working, Sola shouted. All enemy vessels converging on our position. Coalition and human fleets are disengaging. Shields at 60%, Morrison reported. Make that 50%. We're taking a beating, Commander. The ship shook violently. Zekthar gripped his command chair as another impact nearly threw him from his seat. On the view screen, he could see predecessor ships surrounding them, their weapons creating a continuous barrage of destructive energy. Shields at 30%. How long have we been transmitting? Zekthar demanded. 90 seconds, Park said. Her voice was calm, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the tactical console. 2.5 minutes to go. 2.5 minutes. The shields wouldn't last 2.5 minutes. Redistribute power from life support to shields, Zekthar ordered. Sir, that will give us breathable air for maybe 20 minutes. We won't need it longer than that. Do it. The shields strengthened slightly, buying them precious seconds. But the predecessor ships were adapting their weapons, focusing their fire on specific shield segments to create cascading failures. They're targeting our port shield generators, Morrison said. They figured out our weak point, of course they had. They always adapted. Sola, rotate the ship. Don't let them concentrate fire on any single section. The Eternal Vigil began to spin slowly, distributing the incoming fire across its entire shield envelope. It bought them more time, but not enough. Shields at 15%. 2 minutes remaining on the transmission. Another impact, harder than the rest. The lights on the bridge flickered. Somewhere in the ship, Zekthar heard the sound of metal tearing. Hull breach on Deck 7, Sola reported. Emergency bulkheads holding. Shields at 8%. Commander, Park said quietly. If the shields fail before we finish the transmission, they won't. Zekthar surprised himself with how confident he sounded. We just need to hold for 1 more minute. But a minute was an eternity. The shields continued to drop, 7%, 6%, 5%. The ship shuddered continuously now, impacts coming so fast they blended into one continuous assault. 4%, 3%. Transmission complete in 30 seconds, Sola announced. Come on, Morrison muttered, his hands flying across the weapons console as he tried to shoot down incoming fire. Come on, hold together. Shields at 2%. 1%, 10 seconds, Sola shouted. The ship lurched violently. An explosion somewhere aft sent smoke rolling across the bridge. Zekthar felt heat on his scales as fire suppression systems activated. Shields down. Hull taking direct hits. 5 seconds. Another impact. The bridge view screen cracked. Zekthar saw a predecessor ship directly in front of them, its weapons charging for what would certainly be a killing blow. Transmission complete, Sola screamed. Signal achieved. Go, go, go! Full reverse thrust. Get us out of here! The Eternal Vigil's engines screamed as they pushed the damaged ship away from the center of the formation. The predecessor ship fired, but they were already moving. The blast scorched their hull but didn't penetrate, and then the coalition and human fleet struck, with all 43 predecessor ships clustered together. Focused on a single point, they were vulnerable. The combined fleet had fallen back to optimal firing range and now unleashed everything. Missiles, torpedoes, beam weapons, kinetic strikes, everything the galaxy could throw at an enemy. The predecessor ships tried to adapt, but they were surrounded, taking fire from every angle simultaneously. Their adaptive systems couldn't keep up with the sheer volume and variety of attacks. One predecessor ship exploded, then another, then 3 more in quick succession. "They're breaking formation," Chen's voice came through, elated. "They're scattering." "All ships pursue and engage," Corveth ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The battle devolved into a running fight across the system. The predecessor ships, their tactical advantage broken, attempted to retreat. But the combined fleet had learned their capabilities, learned their weaknesses. Ship by ship, they were hunted down. The Eternal Vigil limped back to the main fleet, venting atmosphere and trailing debris. Medical teams were already rushing to treat wounded crew members. The bridge was a disaster of broken equipment and emergency lighting, but they were alive. Final count, Chen reported hours later, after the last predecessor ship had been destroyed. All 47 enemy vessels eliminated. Coalition losses, 612 ships. Human losses, 41 ships. Total casualties estimated at 90,000 personnel. The numbers were staggering, but they had won. Against impossible odds, they had destroyed an enemy that should have annihilated them. Commander Zekthar, Frental's hologram appeared, her crystalline form pulsing with complex patterns. "The Council has been informed of your actions, your unauthorized decision to use yourself as bait. High Counselor, I take full responsibility. You misunderstand, Commander. The Council wishes to commend you. What you did today, what all of you did, represents the best of what the Coalition can be. Different species working together, sacrificing together, you have our gratitude." She turned her attention to Park and Morrison, and to Earth's representatives. "Your species fought with courage and innovation. The Council has voted unanimously to grant Earth full membership immediately, ending the probationary period. Welcome to the Galactic Coalition." Park grinned wearily. "Thank you, High Counselor. Though I have to say we prefer less dramatic membership ceremonies." Despite everything, Zekthar found himself laughing. The humans had a gift for finding humor even in the darkest moments, but the laughter died as Dr. Chen appeared via hologram, his expression grim. "Commander, High Counselor, everyone, we have a problem. The predecessor ships we destroyed? They were broadcasting constantly during the battle. I've analyzed the transmissions. They were sending tactical data and situation reports." "Sending them where?" Zekthar asked, though dread was already coiling in his stomach. "Deeper into predecessor space, to the source of the awakening." Dr. Chen pulled up a star chart showing deep space beyond the frontier. "Based on the signal strength and direction, I estimate there's a central predecessor installation somewhere in this region. It's where the fleet we just fought came from. And now it knows about us," Corveth said slowly. "It knows we destroyed 47 of its ships. Worse than that," Dr. Chen said. "It knows how we destroyed them. It has complete tactical data on all our capabilities, all our strategies. Whatever comes next will be adapted to counter everything we just did." Silence fell over the communications network. They had won the battle, but in doing so, they had painted a target on the entire coalition. "How long do we have?" Ambassador Webb asked. "Unknown. But predecessor technology operates on quantum principles, near instantaneous communication across vast distances. Whatever response is coming could be here in weeks or days." Zekthar looked at the tactical display, at the damaged ships limping back to formation, at the casualty report still scrolling across screens. They had lost 90,000 people today. How many more would die in the battles to come? "Then we prepare," he said finally. "We repair our ships, reinforce our defenses, and we research. We find the location of this central installation and we neutralize it before it can send more fleets. That would require going on the offensive," Frental said, "venturing into unmapped predecessor space. The risks are nothing compared to waiting here for them to overwhelm us," Park interrupted. Then more respectfully, "High Counselor, humanity learned a long time ago that you can't win wars by playing defense. Eventually, you have to take the fight to the enemy." "She's right," Corveth said. "We need to strike at the source. Destroy whatever is controlling these fleets before it can adapt to our tactics and send forces we cannot defeat." Frental's form pulsed with the crystalline equivalent of a sigh. "Very well. Commander Zekthar, you will lead a joint task force, coalition and human vessels into predecessor space. Your mission is to locate and neutralize the central installation. You will have full authority to requisition whatever resources you need. Thank you, High Counselor. Don't thank me yet, Commander. You're embarking on the most dangerous mission in Coalition history. Many of you will not return. Her form brightened slightly. But if anyone can succeed, it's the Force that won today. The warriors who proved that working together, we can overcome anything. As the meeting ended and commanders began coordinating repair and resupply efforts, Park approached Zekthar. Commander, can I speak frankly? Always, Lieutenant Commander. We barely won today. We had advantages. Surprise, the Saturn Protocol, their focus on sterilization over tactics. Next time, they'll be ready for us. Next time, she trailed off. Next time, many of us will die, Zekthar finished. I know, but what choice do we have? Park smiled grimly. None. Which is why humans will be with you every step of the way. We've fought impossible battles before. Sometimes we lose. But we never stop fighting. Zekthar felt something he'd never experienced before. A sense of kinship with an alien species. These humans with their strange customs and violent history had become true allies. Not just politically, but personally. Lieutenant Commander Park, I have a question. Why did you volunteer to come aboard the Eternal Vigil? You could have stayed safe on your fighter. Park was quiet for a moment. Because I've seen what happens when allies abandon each other. I've seen coalitions fall apart because no one was willing to sacrifice for anyone else. Today you were willing to die for a fleet that included human ships. How could I not stand beside you? That means more than you know. I know exactly what it means, Commander. It means we trust each other. And trust is worth more than any weapon. As the Eternal Vigil moved toward the repair docks, Zekthar looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there in the ancient depths of space, a predecessor installation was preparing its response. More ships better adapted, deadlier than what they'd just faced. The battle they'd won today was just the beginning. The real war, the war for survival, was about to begin. But for the first time since this crisis started, Zekthar felt something like hope. Because they weren't facing it alone. Human and coalition forces, veterans of countless conflicts standing together. The predecessors had built their machines to eliminate biological life. But they had never encountered life that refused to be eliminated. Life that adapted, survived, and fought back with everything it had. They had never encountered veterans, warriors who carried the lessons of every battle, every loss, every hard-won victory, and they were about to learn why that made all the difference. Epilogue. The veterans. 6 weeks later, the Joint Task Force assembled at the edge of charted space. 200 ships, the largest combined human coalition fleet ever assembled. At its heart was the Eternal Vigil, repaired and upgraded with both coalition and human technology. Zekthar stood on the bridge looking at the fleet display. Beside him were Park, Morrison, and Sola. Behind them, human and coalition officers worked side by side at integrated stations, a sight that would have been unthinkable a year ago. All ships report ready, Sola announced. We can jump on your command, sir. Jump coordinates locked on the predecessor installation, Park added. Based on Dr. Chen's analysis, we should arrive approximately 5,000 kilometers from the target. Should, Morrison muttered. I hate that word, Zekthar almost smiled. In the past weeks, as the fleet prepared, he had learned much about human culture, their humor, their resilience, their stubborn refusal to accept defeat. He had attended memorial services for fallen soldiers, ceremonies that honored the dead while strengthening the living's resolve. He had watched human and coalition engineers work through the night, sharing technology and ideas, creating hybrid systems that surpassed what either species could build alone. He had learned what Ambassador Webb meant when he talked about veterans. They weren't just soldiers who had survived combat. They were the living memory of their species' struggles, carrying forward the lessons learned in blood and sacrifice so that the next generation could do better. Every coalition species had warriors. But only humans had this unbroken chain of veteran wisdom, stretching back thousands of years. And now they were sharing that wisdom with the entire coalition. Commander, Ambassador Webb's voice came through on a private channel. Before you go, I wanted to say something. Go ahead, Ambassador. Earth is proud to stand with you. Whatever happens out there, know that you're not just carrying coalition hopes, you're carrying ours too. Come back safe. We'll do our best, Ambassador. I know you will. That's why we trust you. Webb paused. And Zekthar? For what it's worth, you've earned the right to be called something special in human culture. You're not just a commander anymore. You're a veteran. Zekthar felt his scales warm with emotion. He understood the weight of that title, the respect it carried among humans. Thank you, Ambassador. That means more than you know. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. Different species, different backgrounds, different homeworlds, but united by common purpose, common sacrifice, common hope for the future. All ships, this is Commander Zekthar. In a few moments we will jump into unknown space to face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations. Many of us may not return, but we go knowing that we fight not just for our own survival, but for every species, every world, every child who deserves to grow up in a galaxy free from ancient tyranny. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. The predecessors built machines to eliminate life. They thought force alone would be enough. But they never understood what makes life truly powerful. Not our weapons or our technology, but our ability to stand together. To learn from each other. To fight for each other. He looked at Park, at Morrison, at Sola, at every officer on his bridge. We are veterans of 100 different wars. We carry the wisdom of 1,000 battles. We are human and Vreen and Quellan and every species that has ever refused to surrender in the face of impossible odds. Today we show the universe that veterans, true veterans, never fight alone. He raised his voice for the final command. All ships, jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The fleet jumped. 200 ships vanishing into hyperspace in perfect synchronization. They left behind them a galaxy holding its breath, hoping and praying for their success. What awaited them in predecessor space would test every skill, every tactic, every ounce of courage they possessed. The battles ahead would be brutal. The losses would be terrible. The odds would be overwhelming. But they had something the predecessors could never have predicted. They had each other. And they had learned the most important lesson any veteran knows, that survival isn't about being the strongest or the most advanced. It's about refusing to give up. About learning from every defeat. About standing back up no matter how many times you're knocked down. About fighting not because victory is certain, but because surrender is unthinkable. The ancient machines would learn this lesson the hard way. They had awakened to find a galaxy that had changed in 10 million years. A galaxy that had learned to work together, to combine strengths, to turn diversity into advantage. They had awakened to find a galaxy that included Earth, a small blue world that had spent 10,000 years fighting itself and learning every possible lesson about war, survival, and the unbreakable spirit of warriors who refused to quit. The predecessors had seen combat on a scale that dwarfed modern imagination. Their machines had witnessed the fall of their civilization, but nothing had prepared them for Earth's veterans, and nothing ever could. The end. And the beginning. Here I've run it 17 times. The result doesn't change. Zekthar turned to face her, his tail coiling in agitation. Then explain to me how a single species, a species that only achieved faster than light travel 40 rotations ago, managed to repel a Kresh invasion fleet. The Kresh. The name alone sent ripples of unease through the crew. For 10,000 years they had been the nightmare that kept civilizations awake. Insectoid warriors bred for one purpose, conquest. They had destroyed 12 species in the last millennium. Their warriors were augmented from birth, trained in hive tactics that had evolved over epochs, equipped with technology that harvested the knowledge of every world they consumed, and Earth had stopped them. Not just stopped them. According to the reports, Earth had destroyed them. The preliminary data suggests... Sola paused, choosing her words carefully. Sir, it suggests that the humans didn't just win. They suffered a 92% casualty rate in the initial invasion, regrouped, and then they hunted down every single Kresh ship in their system. When the Kresh attempted to retreat, the humans followed them through the hyperspace jump. No survivors. Zekthar's combat claws extended involuntarily, an ancient reflex his species had never evolved away. That's impossible. You're telling me a species with no military alliance, no access to coalition weapons, and primitive fusion drives hunted down Kresh dreadnoughts? Yes, sir. And the Kresh warriors? The ground forces? Sola's hand shook as she pulled up another file. Images appeared in the air between them. Zekthar felt his blood run cold. The images showed Kresh warriors, the most feared soldiers in the galaxy, scattered across human battlefields. But these weren't the casualties of a desperate last stand. These were methodical eliminations, strategic decimations. The Kresh had been outfought, outmaneuvered, and outlasted by a species they should have crushed in days. The Coalition Council has issued orders, Sola said quietly. They want us to go to Earth, to establish first contact officially and to understand what happened. Zekthar deactivated the display. In the reflection of the dark screen, he saw his own eyes staring back, wide with an emotion he hadn't felt since his first combat drop centuries ago. Apprehension. Set course for the Sol system, he said. And send a message to the Council. Tell them we're making contact with Earth, but he paused. Tell them we're proceeding with extreme caution. As Sola left to relay the orders, Zekthar remained alone in the dimmed command center. He pulled up one final image from the human battle reports. It was a statement left by the Kresh Hive commander before his ship was destroyed, transmitted in a desperate burst to any Kresh forces that might hear it. The translation was simple, but it chilled Zekthar to his core. Do not engage the humans. They do not fight like any species we have encountered. They do not fight to win territory. They fight to ensure their enemy never rises again. They have something they call veterans, warriors who have survived their own species' conflicts. I have seen combat across 100 worlds, but I have never seen anything like this. They are not soldiers. They are something else, something older, something we cannot defeat. Retreat, retreat while you still... The message ended there. Zekthar closed the file and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in a small yellow star system on the edge of the galaxy, there was a species that had done the impossible, and in 3 days, he would meet them. The question wasn't whether Earth would join the Coalition. The question was whether the Coalition was ready for what that would mean.